Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're diving straight into the hidden dangers of the hantavirus. We'll be breaking down exactly what this virus is, the severe health risks it poses, and most importantly, the absolutely crucial steps you need to take to protect yourself. Honestly, whether you're opening up a summer cabin, cleaning out an old barn, or just doing some deep spring cleaning in a dusty attic, understanding this pathogen could quite literally save your life. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. First up, what is hantavirus? Second, we'll understand the health risks. Third, how the virus actually spreads. And finally, effective prevention and control. Let's get into it. Section 1. What is hantavirus? Unmasking the invisible threat. So I want you to imagine a super common scenario. You're cleaning out an old summer cabin, maybe sweeping a dusty shed, or clearing out a basement that hasn't seen the light of day in months. You spot some mouse droppings, grab a broom, and just start sweeping. The sunlight catches the dust swirling up into the air as you're breathing heavily from the work. Well, without even knowing it, you might be stirring up a deadly virus. Because that very dust is the primary delivery system for hantavirus. And really, this brings up the wild visual irony of this disease. The virus is actually carried by seemingly innocent, kind of cute rodents, like the deer mouse, the white-footed mouse, and the bank vole. In their natural reservoirs, these little guys don't even get sick. They carry the virus completely asymptomatically. But the reality of what they leave behind in their environment, it is anything but harmless to humans. When we look closely at the microscopic level, hantavirus is a tiny 90 to 160 nanometer negative-sense RNA virus from the Bunya viralis order. It's an enveloped virus made up of 3 RNA segments: small, medium, and large. Now, I know that sounds highly technical, but here's what you actually need to know about how it works inside your body. Those segments code for proteins that allow the virus to latch onto human cells, specifically the endothelial cells that line our blood vessels. When it does that, it causes those blood vessels to literally leak, which is the root cause of the severe symptoms we're going to talk about in a minute. But the big takeaway right now is that this microscopic structure survives incredibly well in the droppings, saliva, and urine of those infected rodents. Moving chronologically, the history of this bug is pretty fascinating. A disease with fever and kidney failure was actually described in Chinese texts around 1,000 years ago, but it really grabbed modern medical attention during the Korean War in the early 1950s. Thousands of soldiers suddenly came down with the mysterious hemorrhagic fever. It wasn't until 1978 that the specific virus was finally isolated from a striped field mouse near the Hantan River in South Korea, which, you guessed it, is exactly where it gets its name. Later on, in 1993, the virus made terrifying headlines in the Americas when a major outbreak of unexplained fatal respiratory failure hit the Four Corners region of the United States. That one was ultimately identified as the Sin nombre hantavirus. Section 2. Understanding the health risks. A tale of two syndromes. Now, the absolutely crucial difference to understand here is between the Old World and New World variants. The Old World variant causes hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome, or HFRS. Found mostly in Europe, Asia, and parts of Africa, it aggressively attacks the kidneys, causing fever, internal bleeding, low blood pressure, and acute kidney failure. On the flip side, we have the New World variant, found in North and South America. This causes Hantavirus Pulmonary Syndrome, or HPS. Instead of going after the kidneys, HPS targets the lungs. Remember those leaky blood vessels I mentioned? Well, they cause the lungs to rapidly fill with fluid, leading to severe shortness of breath and even heart failure. 60%. Let that number sink in for a second. That represents the highest mortality rate of Hantavirus Pulmonary Syndrome, while the kidney-targeting HFRS has a fatality rate of up to 15%, which is still bad. HPS is just a shockingly lethal disease. It usually starts off looking like standard flu symptoms, fever, muscle aches, fatigue, but within just a few days, it can aggressively progress to life-threatening respiratory distress. It is a disease that demands our absolute respect and attention. And to make matters even more serious, there is currently no FDA-approved vaccine or specific antiviral cure for HPS. Now, while there are some inactivated virus vaccines used locally over in China and South Korea for the kidney variant, if you contract the pulmonary syndrome in the Americas, there is simply no magic pill. Treatment is almost entirely supportive care in an intensive care unit. Doctors have to rely on providing supplemental oxygen, mechanical ventilation, and sometimes dialysis just to keep the patient's organs functioning while their own immune system fights off the virus. Section 3. How the virus spreads. The airborne danger. The key mechanism you need to understand here is aerosolization. You might naturally think you have to be bitten by a rat to catch a rodent-borne disease, right? But with hantavirus, bites are actually incredibly rare. It also doesn't usually spread from person to person, with the very rare exception of the Andes virus strain down in South America. Instead, it infects you when you simply breathe in contaminated dust. When fresh or even dried rodent droppings get disturbed by a broom, a vacuum cleaner, or just a strong draft of wind, those viral particles become suspended right there in the air. This perfectly highlights the lingering, invisible danger of this whole thing. These rodent carriers shed the virus for months in their urine and feces without ever showing a single symptom themselves, which means any environment where they nest or forage can essentially become a hazardous biological zone long after the animal itself has packed up and left the building. Think about it. A mouse might have lived in your shed all winter, moved out in the spring, but the viral particles they left behind in those dark corners, they remain highly infectious. So naturally, this puts specific groups and specific locations at a much, much higher risk. This is exactly why this matters to you. You have to be particularly careful if you're heading into rural areas, opening up closed spaces that have been sitting empty, or really just cleaning out an attic where rodents might have sought shelter from the cold. Forestry workers, farmers, hikers sleeping in trail shelters, and construction workers clearing old structures. They all frequently encounter these exact environments and need to be on high alert. And here is a truly surprising fact about how we handle this pathogen. While the ultraviolet rays from direct sunlight can actually destroy the hantavirus in just a few hours outdoors, the virus is incredibly resilient indoors. In dark, enclosed, temperature-controlled spaces, like sheds, basements, and cabins, the virus can survive in the environment for several days, and sometimes even weeks if the temperatures are cold enough. Section 4. Effective Prevention and Control. Your Survival Checklist. Okay, let's start with what not to do. The absolute golden rule of hantavirus prevention is to never, ever sweep or vacuum dry droppings. I really cannot stress this enough. Reaching for a broom or a standard vacuum cleaner instantly launches those deadly viral particles straight into the air you are breathing. It triggers that exact mechanism of aerosolization we talked about earlier. Just don't do it. Instead, you need to follow this exact wet cleaning protocol. First things first, protect yourself. Wear a mask and rubber gloves. Second, generously spray the droppings, urine, and any nesting materials with a household disinfectant or a 10% bleach to water solution. Third, let it sit for exactly 5 minutes. The virus is highly susceptible to bleach, and this crucial waiting period is what actually neutralizes it. Fourth, wipe it all up wet with paper towels, stuff those towels into a sealed plastic bag, and throw them in the outdoor garbage. And finally, wash your gloved hands thoroughly, dispose of the gloves safely, and then wash your bare hands with good old soap and water. Of course, your absolute best defense is just keeping rodents out of your living spaces entirely. You can do this by sealing up any holes in your home's foundation or walls that are larger than a 1/4 inch. Seriously, mice can squeeze through incredibly tiny gaps. Make sure to store all your food, and that includes pet food, in thick plastic or metal containers with tight lids. Keep your garbage sealed up. Clear away brush, tall grass, and wood piles from the immediate perimeter of your home so they don't have cozy places to hide. And always, always open the doors and windows to air out a closed building or cabin for at least 30 minutes before you even begin cleaning inside. So, as we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with a final thought. We've seen how a seemingly innocent mouse can leave behind a microscopic pathogen capable of causing rapid, life-threatening organ failure. We've learned that you simply can't just sweep the problem away. So the next time you head out to clean a dusty, forgotten space, whether it's a camper, a shed, or an attic, will you remember the invisible threat hiding in the dust? And will you take the time to spray it down first? Stay safe, stay informed, and we'll catch you in the next explainer.